Back and better than ever on this Wednesday. Episode 36 of the Sports On broadcast presented by SE Radio. Joe, how's it going?
It goes, my friend. Another Wednesday. Let's get it done.
Beautiful day out, too. We're stuck inside. All right, so before we jump into anything, again, you can always leave a comment on our live feed. You can tweet us using the handle at Sporting Edge 1. You can also text or call our SE Radio hotline at 267-404-MYSE. This episode, Joe and I are going to act like we are investors, and we're going to look into the future of all four professional teams and place our investments in their stock. So let's start off with the Philadelphia Flyers as the season is coming to an end. A little disappointing season, but let's look at the players first. Joe, how do you feel about Claude Giroux?
Claude Giroux. He's a very talented player. I don't think that he gets the respect he deserves as a captain, but I think that we're starting to see the effects of an aging Claude Giroux. I think his best hockey is behind him. Now, that's not to say that he's not going to be maybe a 50, 55 point player going forward, but I think he needs a lot of help around him now. I don't think he can carry the load like he was doing for 2 or 3 seasons.
I agree. I think he has declined almost every year since Laviolette deemed him the best player in the world. And I mean, in hindsight, obviously that's not how it turned out. But I think he is an aging player. He is declining. Would you buy or sell into his future?
That's tough. What's he going to start the season at 30 next year? On his future, and I'd have to sell. I mean, I said last year they should have tried to look for a trade just to get some pieces in there for him, because I think by the time that the young nucleus is ready, I think that he's going to be, past his prime, way past his prime.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I would sell as well. Of course, we have some other star players on the team right now who also aren't performing at the highest level. Wayne Simmons seems to be the only one who's having a very good season, if not great season. Voracek hasn't been the same since he got the deal. Braden Shen, new deal, not chipping in like we would hope to. What are your thoughts on them, and what would you do in the future with them?
Well, I think Simmons is going to be here. You know what? I really don't see any of those guys going anywhere, at least within the next 2 years. Even with Giroux, I think maybe they could try to find a trade, but I really don't know if you'd get a good value for him right now. But looking at Shen and Simmons and Voracek, I think that they've figured out that that's going to be their core. And, looking at those guys, I know Voracek, he's a turnover machine. And seems like Simmons is the only guy that brings it every night. And Shen has just been so inconsistent. It's pretty tough to, get behind him. I mean, he gets really hot at times, but then he just disappears. So I think they're going to be around. I just think that, they need more depth. They just have too many of the same players. They get nothing out of their third and fourth line. Even their second line at times disappears. It's tough. They've been scrambling the lines all season long.
And Couturier really hasn't jumped into the role that we thought he would have. But
right. Well, he spent a good amount of the year hurt as well.
Yep.
For the second straight year that he's had an injury. But he, in terms of being a top 10 pick and thinking that he was going to be this dominant two-way player, we just haven't seen that yet.
No, I tend to agree. So obviously they need to add depth, like you said, but let's transition into sort of the future players upcoming and talk about the Travis Konechny's of the world, Shane Gostisbehere, who struggled very early on and was benched a couple times in the season, looking like he's finding the rhythm now. And then, of course, Ivan Provorov. For me, looking at Gostisbehere, I think he really has improved, and he's sort of there was an adjustment period for him this season. Let me say that. So He didn't start off very well, but I think he's starting to come full circle and figuring out kind of countering everything that the teams were doing to him. And then, of course, Provorov looks like a great prospect, and you hope he doesn't have the same struggles that Gostisbehere had. I would definitely buy into the Flyers' future, but as far as the star players right now, I would sell. What about you?
Um, I mean, if you could get something decent back for Giroux, I think you should do it. I'm not moving Simmons. Um, I mean, like I said, Voracek is he's very inconsistent and just like Shen. I mean, I think you got to keep Ghost. He's a bright spot. I know he struggled in the second year. Provorov is obviously the best defenseman going forward. It's going to be exciting to get some of those other young defensemen up. I mean, it should be interesting. But I mean, if I'm going to sell anyone, it's definitely going to be Giroux.
I got a quick question for you about maybe Steve Mason and Michael Neuwirth. Do you think either one of them are back here next season? And then let's kind of talk about, like, from that point, let's transition into the fact that the Flyers do have some goaltenders in the farm system. Do you think that's who's going to lead them next season?
Well, I think Neuwirth will be here. I think they'll try to get a deal done for Mason, like you saw towards the deadline. But I know that they gave him an extension, so I know he'll be here. But it wouldn't surprise me to see them move on from Steve Mason. I do know that they have a lot invested in their younger guys. I would like to see Stolarz get a shot. I know he's been very inconsistent, but he's freakishly big for a goaltender, which I think that you could turn that into something, even as like a serviceable backup, let's say.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean they're waiting on Carter Hart to come up and take that number one goalie's position, and he's been the brightest spot in the organization.
Let's quickly jump into the farm system a little bit. You have Nick Cousins, Sam Moran, and others. Do you like the way that not Dave Hackstall, Ron Hextall has drafted? And are you excited for the Flyers' future? I guess.
Yeah, you have to feel good about the last few drafts that we've had. I feel like if you Google Flyers prospects, and you're going to see a ton of great news. Um, in terms of guys they have scattered throughout juniors and coming up. But I think he's trying to build through the defense, and he has his future goaltender in the system as well, and we'll see going forward. I think there's a couple other young prospects that could possibly make the team next year. They're only going to get younger. We say that they're a young team now in certain spots, but they're really only going to get younger. I mean, a lot of their talented prospects are only anywhere from 18 to 20 years old, so they're pretty young. But I mean, as far as drafts go, I mean, he's done a very good job in terms of rebuilding that defense, which we complained for years. Even when the Flyers made their cup run, they were only two defensive lines deep. So, um, you know, it, you really look at the model from Los Angeles, from him coming from the Kings and building that defense up in front of Quick,
Yep.
and then expanding outward. That's really the way that it looks like he's building here, and I think he's been doing a pretty good job.
So we know that he can draft. Can he attract some free agents? And also, what are your thoughts on Dave Hackstall? Would you buy or sell? How do you like the future with Hackstall behind the club?
Um,
For me, I think I voiced it kind of last week that I don't think Hackstall will be the long term plan. I think he kind of struggled adjusting this season, much like Ghost did. In your second season, they're going to study everything that you're doing, and I feel like he didn't really adjust. He is a second half of the season kind of coach, kind of fires his guys up, and I don't think he did that this year. I don't have as much trust in him as I do Ron Hextall.
yeah, I definitely trust Hextall, and in terms of being able to draw free agents, I don't think the Flyers will ever struggle in with drawing free agents in, just because they've never struggled to really do so.
But I think the
Uh,
problem is that they're up against the
but
cap.
right, yeah, I mean they're working their way out of that Holmgren mess. But I mean, I really don't think that in with free agency, with all the young guys they have. I mean, yeah, obviously we've been saying for years that Giroux needs a winger who can score. but it's very difficult to find that. And I don't think there's an issue in terms of guys being drawn to the Philadelphia market to want to play. But yeah, Hextall's hands were really tied by what Holmgren did before he came in there. And and then speaking a bit about Dave Haxtell, I really don't. I'm really indifferent about him. I don't know. I
So
just
you
feel
wouldn't
like
buy or sell. You're just holding.
yeah, I got to see what he does next year. I just feel like there hasn't been enough talent on that team for him to do anything with anyway. I mean,
Fair point.
realistically, what's he going to do? Sneak them into the playoffs when they shouldn't be in again? They shouldn't have made the playoffs last year. They didn't. They're not obviously not going to make the playoffs this year. I just don't think there's enough talent on that team to really give him a good to really gauge how he's going to perform. I think that they just have way too many third and fourth line players and guys playing out of their roles, and I think that he's been given a tough hand. Not to say that I think he's going to be a great coach. I'm still going to say the jury's out on him.
So as far as the rest of the season goes, there's only a few games left. We've been playing the highlights of the last two wins that they've had. They're 6 games out of the playoffs, but you are right. It doesn't seem like they're gonna make the playoffs. What would you say the expectations are for next year? Do you think it's another, try and make the wild card? Do you think they step up? Do you think they miss it again? Because I feel like they will be able to contend next year, especially if they add some of that young talent. But again, I would say probably a wild card team at best. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that they could potentially be on the cusp again next year. I don't think that they're not a shoe-in. That's for sure. I mean, it's always a battle. Come the second half of the season, trying to claw your way into the playoffs. I think that they could do that again, but they're not built to go further than the first round if they
When
even
do
were
you
able
think
to
they
win a
will
game.
be though?
I'm going to say at least another 2 years. At least
So
another 2 years
that
away from
2020
it.
vision we got going on.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah, in every sport.
let's transition from the Flyers and talk about the Phillies, who we talked about extensively last season. So we'll try and keep this short. But some of the players would be, you know, Michael Franco, or some of the players that are already on the team. You have Michael Franco, Vince Velasquez, Nola, and Herrera would kind of be the core group that's already in the majors. How do you feel about them?
Uh, I really don't see at this point. I really don't see Franco being better than lifetime. Let's say a lifetime hitter. I don't see him being better than 275, and that's being very generous. I think that he's going to be from that 260 to 275 range in terms of batting average goes. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to get you 25 to 30 home runs and 100 RBIs every year. I just don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to hit for a high average. He's too streaky of a hitter, and he's not selective enough at the plate. He's got to change his approach in terms of different styles
I
of
tend to
pitchers.
agree,
I
but
really don't.
I
I really
think he
don't
was
think that
pressing.
he.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you got it.
I was gonna say, like, as far as Franco goes, I am really interested with the upcoming season having a little bit of protection in the lineup. I want to see if he does change that approach that you're talking about. He was swinging at everything, and I feel like he was pressing a little too much. So I really hope that changes. For me, Velasquez, I've talked about it before. I think I asked Elijah if he could become a closer just because of the strikeout volume he has. I really want to see him develop this season. Of course, they have guys like Eichhoff and stuff like that building towards the future. Aaron Nola was kind of a surprise last year. Didn't do as well as we thought, and I really do like Herrera.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's definitely a bright spot. Philly struck gold again in a Rule 5 draft pick in Herrera. Looking at Shane Victorino, and now you have Herrera, who they hit on. For me, I'm excited for their young pitching staff. I'm really excited to see another year of Eichhoff. He's been pretty good the last 2 seasons. I hope Nola is able to stay healthy and stay on track. But like you said, if Vince Velasquez can stay healthy and can command all of his pitches, I think he could be a dominant pitcher for them this season. Now, his trouble last year was he really couldn't get past the sixth inning. So I would like to see him improve there. But in terms of the excitement level, I can say that I'm definitely going to tune into every game just to watch the pitching staff alone. I want to see some stuff out of Franco. Hopefully, Tommy Joseph is able to turn into a guy who could be serviceable and maybe even be our everyday first baseman. I'm excited to see what he can do. And I saw that Andrew Knapp is going to make the team, who can place him first, and he's backing up Cameron Rupp as well. Obviously, we know that Knapp, being a younger guy, he's not the catcher of the future. That's obviously going to be Alfaro if he's able to improve his defense. We know he can hit. That's the reason he's in AAA, is because he's really, not that he's terrible defensively, but he's still struggling with certain things that he's got to work on. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think they could be a 500 ball club if I'm being realistic. I could see them win, as many as 80 games. I don't think they could go higher than that. But if I had to put a number on it, I would say they could get up to 80 games.
Yeah, possibility. I am really interested to see the farm system. I want to take a couple trips out, especially to Lehigh, because you have J.P. Crawford,
Right.
the Nick Williams, Alfaro, even Mickey Moniak.
Yeah, don't
Looks
forget
like
Roman Quinn too. Roman Quinn's going to be an exciting
Roman Cook.
player.
Well, I feel like he will be up on the major league team rather soon. So again, there's not really many expectations with the major league team, so I want to venture out to the Reading, Lehigh, all that. As far as manager goes, I'm definitely selling on Pete Mackanin. I think he's just an interim coach for now until they find the right guy and the team improves. GM Matt Klentak, more of a stats guy. Andy McPhail came in. He's more operations. I do have some faith in them, and what I really like is that the owner, John Middleton, has stepped up, become the forefront of the owners group, and I just feel like having someone out there ready to take the blame, ready to take the success that comes with being the owner of the Phillies. I really enjoy the fact that that they now have a face to the franchise essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree on Mackanin. I actually think he did a very good job last year with what he had. And even just listening to him talk in his interviews, he's a very honest guy. I think that when you have a young ball club like the Phillies do, and he's sort of like that that dad kind of manager, where he's going to tell them that they're doing something wrong and they're going to address it. He's not going to sit there and pat him on the back and tell them it's okay. He's going to let them know that they made a mistake. I think he does a good job in holding his guys accountable. So I mean, I'm definitely buying on him. I could see your point in terms of thinking he's only interim manager, but he's got a lot of guys behind him as well. I mean, he's got Larry Bowa on the bench, who's been a manager before.
True, fair.
There's a lot of good leadership on that management group, and I actually have a lot of faith in what the Phillies are doing.
Season expectations, we're kind of on the same page. Probably 500 at best. But again, when you think this team is going to be ready to contend, I feel like they're probably even maybe 3-4 years out instead of 2.
I mean, if I would say that if their guys really don't perform in AAA this year, their prospects that they're high on, then they could be another 2 or 3 years away. But I think that if their guys perform to what they expect them to do, that this roster could potentially be filled out by the end of this season, and they could be ready to be a young team chasing something next year. I mean, not that they're going to win the division or anything, but I think that they could potentially make some noise next year.
Stay in the wild card race for a little bit.
Yeah.
Understood. Well, that's going to wrap up the first half of our show. Again, you guys can always climb in, comment on the video, give us a phone call if you want to. We have a lot to get to in the second half. We're going to look at the Sixers. We're going to look at the Eagles and their future. We're going to deem who we think might bring the next championship. And, of course, Joe, we're bringing back the birthday trivia. That'll be first out of the break. We will see you guys in a little bit.
Support our podcast by using mysportingedge.com/Amazon to make your next online purchase.
You're listening to SE Radio, brought to you by Sporting Edge, online at mysportingedge.com. Sporting Edge. Follow us on Twitter at SportingEdge1 and like us on Facebook by searching Sporting Edge.
Hey guys, welcome back into the show. This is episode 36 of the Sports On broadcast presented by SE Radio. Again, you can always chime in, leave us some comments, and tell us we're idiots. We accept everything. All right, so we are going to jump into one of our favorite games. We used to play it a lot. We're bringing it back. Mason, why don't you give us some background music, and we're going to jump into some birthday trivia, Joe. Bring your A game.
I'm ready, son. I'm
All
ready.
right. This person turns 55, turned 55 2 days ago. His college was UNLV. He played for 4 teams, including the Eagles from 1985 to 95. So that should give you a good perspective. A 4-time Pro Bowler, threw for nearly 30,000 yards and 207 TDs. And do you have a guess?
Give it to me one more time.
All right. 4-time Pro Bowler, played for 4 teams, including the Eagles. He also threw for close to 30,000 yards and 207 TDs, so that limits it down to a quarterback, obviously. The 1990 NFC Player of the Year, and his college was UNLV. And if you don't get this, well, then you're not a fan.
He was a quarterback?
He was a quarterback in the 85 to 95 range for your Philadelphia Eagles.
It's got to be Randall.
It's got to be Randall. That's correct. Good job. This one I'm hoping to stump on you. Yeah, I can tell you're very, very happy with yourself. You're so happy.
Yeah, that UNLV one's that's tough.
Yeah.
UNLV, that's tough.
All right, this one I'm hoping you don't get. Turns 38 today. Happy birthday. He played 2 seasons, only 2 seasons with the Philadelphia Phillies, but they were important. They were the 08-09 seasons. A utility player, a pinch hitter. He also scored the game-clinching run in 2005, in the 5th game of 2008.
Turns 38 today. He was a utility player. Was it Eric Bruntlett?
It was Eric Bruntlett, the only one with the unassisted triple play.
There it is.
I'm very impressed, Joe. Good job. Good job. Looks like we had a couple people on Facebook as well. I see that Ruth got Randall Cunningham, but nobody else had Eric Bruntlett, so you are a star. All right, let's cut the music and jump into the Sixers. Let's look at the players first, and they have done a good job of building up the roster, I would say. Let's look at Dario Saric first. And do you believe that he is Rookie of the Year, and are you impressed with the way that he's held up this season?
Yeah, I do believe that he's Rookie of the Year. I think at this point, really his only competition would have been his teammate Joel Embiid. Um, but I'm very surprised at the way he, was able to fight through some adversity this season, and going from being delegated to the bench role and a backup role with Ilyasova.
Never complained either.
Yeah, and then being a true pro as a rookie and coming up and performing at after Embiid goes down and Simmons didn't come back. And then even just with the way he carries himself and the way he talks about his teammates and the team, I'm very impressed with him, and I think there's no question that he's rookie of the year.
Think about this too. Sarge played with his team in Croatia or Turkey, whatever league he was playing in, doesn't matter. Then he goes to the U.S. Olympics. Then he comes and plays summer ball. And then he comes into his rookie season, and he really hasn't hit that rookie wall. Or if he did, it was most likely before the season. He's been very impressive. He's been the igniter for the Sixers this season. And a lot of people have made the case that, come on now, someone has to score on this team. But if you really look at it, Sarge, who is averaging 13.9 points, 6.4 rebounds, and 2.2 assists. You look at other rookies, Malcolm Brogdon is the only one close, who's averaging 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists. But what's most impressive is after the All-Star break, Saric is almost averaging 20 and 8 a game. You get 20 and 8 from Dario Saric alongside a Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, when they all get healthy, this team's going to be pretty dangerous fairly quickly, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's what he's been doing over the last month and a half. It's been incredible. I mean, he's at the beginning of the year, everyone was tuning in to watch Embiid, and now everyone's watching Sarge.
Super Dario.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, he's just a true pro. It's crazy to me. I mean, he's a well-rounded player.
He does everything
he earns his points. It's not like he sits back and hits a bunch of threes and has good stats. Like, he really does earn every field goal that he gets. So it's been impressive.
No, I agree. All right, let's transition. First of all, bye on Dario Saric. Let's transition to one that's a little tougher. We're going to switch to Joel Embiid.
He's a stud.
He has had the Joel Embiid.
There's the sounder.
I know, there's the sounders. You're not kidding. All right, so Joel Embiid, though, how much concern do you have about the fact that he can't stay on the floor? For me, it's definitely an issue. I mean, he's going into next season on the last year of his rookie deal. He's got to play, for me, he's got to play 60 to 70 games and show that he can stay healthy before he gets that contract.
Right. It's funny. Like, I honestly didn't believe that he was hurt when they were sitting him. Just because you still saw him warming up. You still saw him. I did. You still saw him warming up. You still saw highlights. You still saw him, on his Instagram live feed, and he's all over the place.
Dancing at Meek Mill concerts. Wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And and then all of a sudden, he has this tear, and now, why did we wait, another a month and a half for him to sit there and get surgery? When he wasn't going to get surgery, I don't know. It's something just doesn't sound right to me. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in some future years, maybe in like 10 years, let's say, that you found out about some crazy stuff that was going on at the time in that building. But I don't know. I mean, the whole organization is just a mystery at times, and it's very upsetting that we get nothing from Colangelo. But I mean, in terms of his talent, you have to buy on his talent. I need to see him stay healthy, but he's a game changer when he's on the team, when he's on the floor. I mean, if he's healthy, he's your main cog on the offense.
He's
it's not Simmons.
Yeah. No, I disagree.
As good as Ben Simmons could potentially be, I think that Embiid, if he's healthy, he's a generational talent. Not that Simmons won't be a great player, but all the traits that Joel Embiid possesses, I think that he's a generational talent if he's healthy.
It's certainly a good argument to have. It's a good barroom conversation, but I really think that Ben Simmons will be the cornerstone of the franchise, simply because he will be the one running the offense when he does get healthy, and he's going to be setting up Embiid. He does lack the outside game. I think Embiid actually has a better outside game and may have better defensive skills. But Ben Simmons is going to be one that's facilitating the floor. So I would say he's the more important
Don't forget that Joel Embiid is the process.
He is the process. He started the process. However, I just mentioned it. He's got to play 60 games for me, and the way that the new age NBA is going with all these back to backs, resting guys and all that, it's going to be tough for the Sixers to really evaluate him next season, especially if he's not able to start in the beginning of the season. If the season starts and he's not ready, it's going to be really tough for the Sixers to try and gauge even just what to pay him, how many years, what's he worth, is he going to hold up? They have a lot of questions with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, they do. You just gotta hope that their medical staff can get him on the floor by opening night next year, which I really don't have too much faith in. But we'll see what happens.
Is odd.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to explain it.
And the worst part about that whole situation is we're not gonna know until opening night if he's playing. I guarantee it. Just because of how shady this front office is.
Yeah.
It's you get no answer.
Well, it's been like that all season. Is he gonna play? Is he not gonna play?
I feel bad for the guys who cover them every day because they get nothing. They basically all they get is their game recap. They don't get any other news really.
If Colangelo was a cereal, he'd be Raisin Bran. I mean seriously, but
mark that one.
All right, we'll cut that up and add it to the soundboard. One thing I do really like about the Sixers, though, is their bench is definitely taking form. They have Rashawn Holmes, who I think will be a very good asset in the future. T.J. McConnell, I don't think he'll be the starter in a few years, but he will be one of those players that comes off the bench. He's able to contribute. I even think someone like Stauskas can come in a limited role and play some minutes. Robert Covington is someone you can use defensively and from the outside shot. I think they're piecing it together, but what's most impressive about this team is the assets they accumulated, thanks Sam Hinkie. And once they get that outside shooter, I think this team is really going to take off.
Yeah, you really got to hope that this front office nails the draft coming up. I just don't have faith in that front office right now at all. What do you hear from the owner once a year, maybe?
Yeah, Josh Harris is a very sly person. I don't really
non-existent.
I agree. And then the whole fact that they kicked out Sam Hinkie, they bring in Colangelo. Okay, that's your call, but it definitely turns out, or it's going to be tough in this draft, especially upcoming. They've been winning too many games in the second half, to be honest. I hate to say that because it is great to see the Sixers finally win, but the fact that they are now dropping to maybe the 6th, 7th pick in the draft, and who knows? They'll still have a shot at the first round pick the way that draft is set up.
They also have a lot of assets to move up if they're if they get to the point where they're nervous, they're not going to get the guy they want.
Right. But I think that's also tough for them too. Like if they wanted to go for Alonzo Ball with the 2nd pick or whatever, like do you really think LA is going to give up that pick? No, they're taking Lonzo Ball. So now what are you left with? Dennis Smith. Malik Monk is someone I really liked, and De'Aaron Fox out of Kentucky. I don't know if you got a chance to see those
I'm
games.
very high on De'Aaron Fox.
Both of them, and they're
very high on him. Yeah, he reminds me of John Wall.
He is, but the other thing you have to weigh, and again, this is the tough part. When Embiid's out, how do you know if you need another slasher? You need an outside shooter. You just don't know. You take best available, I guess, and you figure it out. I don't know, but one guy I really do have some faith in is Brett Brown. There were a lot of question marks in the last few seasons when they were tanking on purpose, and I guess you could say they still are tanking, but Brett Brown really showed a lot this season. What about you? You agree?
Yeah, I'm a big Brett Brown fan. I think he's a true coach. I mean, he's one of those guys that that he's getting the best out of his guys night in and night out. There's no question. I mean, he was coaching, Joe Nobody for 2-3 years, and there were still games where they were playing great defense against top-ranked teams and coming away with a few wins. They weren't good teams, by any means, but they were still fighting every single night, and that's one thing that obviously you can take from it and say, wow, these guys fight for their coach. I expect Brett Brown to be here and finish the job. I really do think that he's going to be a great coach.
I tend to agree. We're going to shift over to the Eagles. Rick on Twitter points out that every highlight we just played of the Sixers, they were losing. Gotta love it. All right, let's transition into the Eagles. Oh, you know what? One more point. For me, the Sixers are the team that will win the next championship in this city. I look at all the assets they have. Do you tend to agree with that?
The Sixers?
Are they the first one to win the championship?
I don't know if any of them are going to win a championship.
All right,
It's
the
been a
biggest
rough.
contender in the next few years.
It's been a rough
Come
few
on, Joe,
years.
play with me.
I mean, in terms of talent, they definitely will have the best in-house talent for sure. I mean,
Doesn't
when you
take
look
that many
around the rest
guys
of
in
the
the NBA either.
no, it doesn't. You're right.
Smaller
You know,
roster.
I mean, you still got to go through LeBron in the East, which isn't going to be easy.
LeBron James.
But I mean, I could if they there's just so many question marks with this team. If they stay healthy, if Embiid is on the floor, if Simmons is okay, is fully recovered with the foot injury, there's just so many question marks with the guys who you expect to be your stars on that team. But I mean, you could argue that on all the teams right now. I mean, you really just don't know. But I mean, if I had to put my money on a team, I would say the Sixers as well, just because they're going to have that much talent on the roster.
Brian points out on Facebook, so the Soul won't win again? Soul got a pretty good shot year in, year out.
Yeah, I think they're the only Philadelphia team that's made the playoffs. Like, what are they?
2 championships?
10 consecutive years or something like that.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
They're a monster.
That
Good job,
nobody
Jaws.
pays attention to. Yeah, it's awful.
Transitioning into the Eagles now. First off, we have some notes before we get into buying or selling on the franchise. Chris Long signs a one-year deal for $24 million, and they also signed Patrick Peterson.
That's a lot of money.
It's not a lot of money. It is in our perspective. So yeah, Chris Long signs. He was with the Patriots last year, and they also picked up Patrick Robinson, who was a first-round pick out of FSU a couple years ago for the Saints. He's been a journeyman in the league. He played 7 games with the Colts last year due to injury. From what I've heard, he's more of a slot corner and won't be playing on the outside. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say that both signings are depth signings. I do like the Chris Long signing, just due to the fact that he can play both end spots. He can mix in a little bit on a third down in the middle if he has to. I really do like that in terms of depth, and it's nice to bring a guy in, or I should say another guy in who has won a Super Bowl on that defense. You have Malcolm Jenkins, who's obviously a leader, but I think that he could take somewhat of a leadership role as well in being a veteran, and the offensive line, the defensive line is still fairly young, so I do like that, and Patrick Robinson is just another depth signing as well. There's no way he's going to be a starting corner first game of the season. I would say he's more of your third, fourth, maybe even
he's
your
your Ron
corner.
Brooks of last season. That's what
Right,
he is.
and I've seen a couple of reports that as soon as Ron Brooks is healthy enough to pass a physical, that he's going to be cut. So that's something to think about as well. I think that they really are going to give Jalen Mills a shot to take one of those corner spots on the outside this season. So I think they're going to draft at least 2 corners, maybe sign one more old veteran like they did with Robinson. I think that they're going to draft one of those corners that they draft. I think they're going to expect to be a starter, and another one maybe a bit of a project, maybe your nickel. But we'll see. Don't forget that Malcolm Jenkins can play a little bit of nickel as well. Yeah, I mean, I like both signings overall.
Yeah, I mean, with this signing, it's not going to change their draft board at all. If there's a good defensive end there, they're going to go pick him up. If there's a good cornerback there, they're going to go get him. It doesn't change anything. I still think Vinny Curry will be your starter in 2017, and Chris Long, like you said, can play either spot, so he'll be more of a rotational player. There's no way you're going to pay someone $7 million to sit behind the guy who's 32 years old and making 2.4 or 2.5, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope that he's able to beat him out. I mean, I love Connor Barwin, but he wasn't doing anything on the other side last year, and Vinny Curry wasn't stealing snaps away from him. So, I don't understand, why he got that big money and then just disappeared. It's the story of our lives in Philadelphia, though.
We'll see where it goes. Let's transition into the buy or sell mode of the Philadelphia Eagles. because the roster and the sport is just so different, we're going to break this down into defensive and offensive players. Let's start with the defense. You got Fletcher Cox, paid a lot of money last season, didn't live up to the contract, in my opinion, in year one. You got Brandon Graham, who definitely improved last season. You also have guys like Jordan Hicks, Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod, any others. As the defense is starting to build, yeah, it doesn't look good right now on the outside, but I would actually buy into the Eagles' defense. I think they showed a lot of promise early in the season, last season.
Yeah, they were a top 10 unit for the first month of the season, even into the second month of the season. But yeah, I mean they really fell off. I just lost my train of thought. They really fell off. It seemed to be right when Leotis McKelvin was getting a little banged up, and with his hamstring injuries, and they were really starting to get picked on in the secondary, and Malcolm Jenkins really had to play more corner than I think they would have liked him to have. But I mean, for me, in terms of offensive, in terms of front seven, I would buy. I think that they're top tier unit in the league. I mean, especially if they're
I
able
think
to,
they need. I think they need to add more depth to the front seven,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
if they let
in the
go of
line,
someone like Kendricks
yeah,
and
in the
some of the
linebacking
others.
core, they definitely need to add a few guys. But I mean, their defensive line has pretty good depth.
And they were pretty good against the run last season as well. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, they've been pretty good overall the last few years against the run. Um, but I mean, yeah, when there's a few. I mean, you can look at this defense and say that you know who your starters are, and there's guys, who you can be confident in. I mean, you have your two safeties. You have three guys on the defensive line. You have a nice young middle linebacker in Jordan Hicks. So I mean, there are some bright spots on the defense for sure. But they really need to address the corner spot, and I think I mean, not that Jordan, like I said, Jordan Hicks is talented, but I think you even need a guy on the side of him that's a playmaker as well. Nigel Bradham had a good season last year, but Michael Kendricks hasn't turned out to be the player that we expected him to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see them take another outside backer early on in the draft either. There's so many spots they could go in the draft. I mean, we'll get into the draft next week, but um, I wouldn't be surprised to see that be an option for them either.
Certainly. And then as we transition over to the offense, I think I'm more of a hold the stock kind of guy when it comes to that, simply because they have so many. Like, they brought in Alshon Jeffrey on a 1-year contract. Same with Torrey Smith. They still got to get a running back or a 3-down running back who is your premier running back. So they definitely have ways to go. Wentz obviously looks good. Ertz, I think, will actually step up. But one guy I want to get your opinion on is Lane Johnson. Would you buy that stock? Would you sell it? Would you hold on to it?
If he's on the field, you got to buy it. I mean, he
But
can't get
that's the
suspended
thing.
again.
If he's on the
Yeah,
field,
if I mean, he's the best right tackle in the league. Without a question, best right tackle in the league. I mean, you saw what they did as soon as he came back on, as soon as he came back from suspension. They were running all over, and they were playing great until he was out. I mean, for me, you'd have to buy into him just because you have to hope that he's learned and he's finally in, and he is the future because he's going to be
puts
your
the
left
right
tackle.
people around him.
He's going to be your left tackle of the future. He is already your left tackle of the future.
Quit the juicing.
So, yeah, quit the juicing. But no, I mean he's a hell of a player when he's on the field. It's another one of those when he's out there kind of players. But I would say that I have to buy it just based on talent. And then in terms of the contracts to Jeffrey and Torrey Smith, I fully expect the Eagles to re-sign Alshon Jeffrey if he gets off to a good start with Carson Wentz this year, which I expect him to. I think that he's going to be here for at least 4 seasons, I'd say. 3 or 4 seasons.
It's a lot of money you're dishing out after this year, if that happens.
Yeah, but you're also gonna get a lot of money off your books. Sproles isn't gonna be here after this year. Peters won't be here after this year. There's a lot of guys that aren't gonna be here that are
Agreed.
older
And
that carry cap.
Peter saves you $12 million, so that's definitely a big
Right.
chunk.
Right. And don't forget, I mean, I've been talking about him for what feels like 4 years now, but I really want to see my boy Trey
Trey
Burton
Burton.
get out there and do some work this year. I'm such a huge fan of Trey Burton. I just really wish that he'd get involved more. And he did towards the end of the season. So
I think
I really hope that he's able to get out there and they're able to use him in different ways because, I mean, he can do everything. I mean, we saw him line up, as a running back a few times under Chip Kelly. He's out there making plays last year.
special teams contributor.
Yeah, special teams contributor. I think that having Jeffrey and Smith is going to help Jordan Matthews. I expect him to have a good year. I mean, don't be surprised to see Jordan Matthews actually have a great year, and then they have to figure out if they want to re-sign Jordan Matthews to a big deal or they want to sign Alshon Jeffrey. That could be an interesting headline. But I think that like with Torrey Smith, it wouldn't surprise me to see him be here for 2 years. But I would think that they're going to draft a guy who's going to be a deep threat in this draft, who could replace him after this season. I would think. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how the draft falls. But I mean, I think that Jeffrey's going to be here. And then, you can't forget about Zach Ertz. I know we've been up on Ertz, we've been down on Ertz. But then again, you got to look at his stats. I mean, he finished last season strong again. He shows up in the second half of the season. He really came to play after people were calling out his toughness, which I really, really liked.
Mm-hmm.
I think he responded well to those criticisms. I think this, I know how you hear, oh, this is his year, but realistically, when you look at the offense and, they get their running back, you have all these options now. You have Smith, you have Jeffrey, you have Ertz, you have Matthews. I mean, you have your boy Nelson Aguilar. You have
My boy. What? When did you become my boy? What are you talking about?
So I mean, let's they have a bunch of guys on offense. I was totally kidding about Aguilar and BGB, by the way. But they have a ton of options now. And don't forget about Selleck. I mean, yeah, he's an old man, but I mean he gets out there and balls. Don't forget.
I love the people that talk about Zach Ertz and say he only performs in December. Well, guess what, guys? Once we're a contender, we need him to perform in December. So
right. I mean, I would like to see him get into the end zone more, personally. But I think that overall, when you look at the offense and what they want to do, you really need. I mean, look at Travis Kelce in Kansas City, and you want, you think that the Eagles are gonna. I mean, they really do run a very similar offense to Kansas City, and you look at it, and they have
unleash the beast. Ertz so
right.
good.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's capable of being, a top 5 tight end. It's just a matter of going out there and doing it. Having a second year with a quarterback for the first time in his career. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, let's try and wrap up the show, and we'll quickly transition into the buyer-selling mode of Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman, Jeff Lurie. Do you want to tackle these as a tandem? Do you want to go individually? What do you want to do? All together now?
You can go first. I think we'll agree, but you can go first.
All right. So Doug Peterson, you look at him. I think he needs another year. He definitely deserves another year. I would hold on that stock. I would say it's kind of trending down, but I'm not making any moves yet. As far as Howie Roseman, right now, or let me say in the offseason, I should have bought stock. I think he's been winning the off seasons, but it needs to translate to the field upcoming. So I would also hold stock on him. And I've told you this before as far as Jeff Lurie goes. Does he really know how to run a team financially? Yes, he does. But as far as trying to earn a championship, I've said it before on past episodes before we were a live broadcast. I don't think the Eagles will ever win a Super Bowl with Jeff Lurie at the helm. So I am out on Jeff Lurie. I'd be selling.
I mean, easier said than
I'm so
done.
vicious, aren't I?
I don't think Jeff Lurie is going anywhere, personally.
No, he's not. He's not.
And it sucks.
I hope.
I mean, he's been the owner for 22 years. He's never won a Super Bowl. He hires guys to do their jobs, which I respect. But I mean, at what point do you really put your foot down and say, hey, let's go? Like, what are we doing here? And you know what? I actually. I've actually, over the last 2 years, I've praised Howie Roseman's moves. I can't believe some of the stuff he's been able to pull off.
And I do like the fact that the front office, I would buy a little bit into the front office. I think when you bring in someone like Joe Douglas, Andy Weidel, it definitely helps your reputation, and just the fact it's more comforting as an Eagles fan to know that you
Right.
have some professionals now in the front office helping make
Right.
personnel choices.
And you know what? I would also say that I truly do think that if Roseman goes south, that his replacement is in the building. I think in Joe Douglas. The importance of Joe Douglas cannot be understated. You just got to look at the way that the teams that he's been with have drafted over the last few years. You look at what the Bears did in last year's draft with Jordan Howard in the 5th round. All those young guys on defense, building that defense up, and then you look at Baltimore coming from a Super Bowl winning organization,
Yep.
How they've drafted. I just think I'm very happy about having Joe Douglas in house, and I really do think that if there's something that goes wrong with Howie, that Joe Douglas is your guy. But for this year, I'm actually thinking that they're going to do pretty well in the draft just because they finally have guys who know what they're looking at.
Let's hope so. Roseman still has final say. Let's hope that that Joe Douglas
Roseman's also a
be in
weak
his
little
ear.
man, so if it came down to it, I would expect Joe Douglas to put his finger in his face and tell him that that's what's happening.
Let's quickly hit on the season expectations next season. I feel like the Eagles, if everything goes to plan, and that usually doesn't happen with the Eagles, but if everything goes to plan, I think they can max out at 11 wins. I would say that they're probably around 9 or 7. That's right. I said 11-5. Hey, the Oakland Raiders turned it around in 2 years, and look where they're at now. They were
but look at all
god
the talent
awful.
they have. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
but also look at the Atlanta Falcons last season. They didn't have a very good defense until the end of the season, and that offense
But they
carried
have
them.
a dynamic offense. Come
Right,
on,
and
man.
now you have Torrey Smith, you have Alshon Jeffrey. Again, if everything goes according to plan, I think the Eagles can contend for a wild card spot at 10-6. I think they max out at 11-5. Like I said, I think they'll be around 9-7.
All right, I'm not putting any numbers down yet, so it's not happening.
Come on, it's always fun.
I'm not doing it.
Chicken.
They could be on the cusp of 8-8 or 9-7. I have to see what they do in the draft. I can't talk about wins or losses yet. It's just not gonna happen.
All right, well, fine. If that's how it's going to be.
I'm not gonna play the game today. I'm sorry.
Let's wrap up the show. We planned to have this as a half-hour show. It didn't go that way.
Never works out that way.
Nope. All right. Next time, we hope to have our mock drafts and jump into that a little bit for you. One thing I did miss in this episode is that I forgot to tell you and everyone listening that because of the because the Oakland Raiders are now moving to Las Vegas, that does give every franchise $50 million over the course of the next 2 seasons to use. So it won't be the salary cap going up, but the franchises do get richer, and that's more money in Jeff Lurie's pocket. Hopefully he reinvest it into parking. He won't. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the show. Thanks to Mason for producing. Joe, always great to be with you. I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can shut it down.
All right. Great episode as always, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to stop by next week. We're going to have a lot of draft stuff to talk about. But as always, you can find us at mysportingedge.com for all of your latest sports news with our articles and updates.
Your mic sounds funky, not to cut in.
Does it sound funky?
Yeah. I'll try and adjust it. Go ahead.
But yeah, don't forget to head over to the website, guys, at mysportingedge.com and check us out on social media for our latest articles, news, and updates. Now, if you ever miss a show, you can also subscribe to us now on YouTube, and as always, you can check us out on iTunes and on Stitcher for all you old heads out there. And don't forget to
It's not an old app.
And don't forget to hit us up on the SE Radio hotline and leave us a message or send us a text during the week by calling in. The number's been on the page all show long at 267-404-MySE. And that's all I got. I'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Adios.